Have you ever noticed how life seems to slow down in a very peculiar way when you are on the verge of a shift? Moments feel heavier, emotions sharper, and yet, there's an undeniable emptiness that creeps in, a quiet whisper telling you that something within you is no longer sustainable. It's subtle at first. Perhaps it appears as a creeping dissatisfaction, a restless feeling that no achievement, no relationship, no routine seems to fully satisfy anymore. Then, as days pass, it grows louder, almost undeniable, nudging you toward a truth most of us resist. The version of yourself that you've clung to so tightly is expiring. This isn't a warning born out of fear. It's not a sign that you have failed or that life is punishing you. On the contrary, it is a natural, even necessary part of evolution, an invisible process quietly aligning your inner frequency with the reality you are truly capable of inhabiting. Imagine a tree in late autumn. Its leaves, vibrant and familiar, slowly fall to the ground. The tree does not mourn the leaves, nor does it resist the change. The shedding is not loss, it is preparation. It is creating the space for new growth, new possibilities, a new identity that is more aligned, more expansive, more authentic. Many of us cling to identities as though they are lifeboats in a stormy sea. We believe that the roles, habits, labels, and even the stories we tell ourselves about who we are permanent fixtures of our existence. Yet, reality has a quiet, unwavering way of showing us that nothing external can sustain the internal evolution that is already happening. Your identity, the one that defines your choices, your fears, and the lens through which you see the world, is no longer capable of holding the frequency you are beginning to resonate with. It's like trying to fit a river into a cup that is simply too small. The river will find its way out no matter how tightly you try to contain it. This period, the expiration of an old self, is both disorienting and profoundly liberating. You may feel a tug-of-war within yourself. On one side, the familiar comfort of who you thought you were. On the other, the magnetic pull toward a self you cannot yet fully name or comprehend. This is the silent collapse before the breakthrough, the space between the old reality that no longer serves you and the new reality quietly nudging its way forward. And it is within this tension, this liminal space, that transformation begins to seed itself. It is essential to understand that identity expiration is not a personal flaw. In fact, it is the sign of a mind and spirit that are alive, evolving, and seeking resonance with a higher possibility. When you cling too tightly to what is expiring, you may feel frustration, anxiety, or even despair. But if you can lean into this moment, observe it without judgment, allow it without resistance, you will begin to experience a subtle but undeniable shift. The discomfort is not an enemy, it is the universe, or perhaps your own higher consciousness, gently urging you to step into a version of yourself that is more authentic, more capable, more aligned. In the coming minutes, you will be guided to recognize the patterns that no longer serve you, to identify the subtle ways your current self is resisting your own expansion, and to glimpse the contours of the new identity quietly emerging. You will begin to see that this process is not about destruction or loss, but about liberation. It is about creating a fertile inner space where your true self can emerge naturally, without force or struggle. So, as we move forward, I invite you to release any expectation, to breathe into the tension you may be feeling, and to witness the gentle unraveling of the old self. The identity you have clung to, the one you have believed in, the one you have tried so hard to maintain, it is reaching its natural conclusion. And in this ending, a new beginning quietly waits, ready to welcome you into a reality more aligned with your true essence. The moment you can see your old self with compassion, without fear, and without resistance, you begin to step into a reality that is not defined by limitation, but by possibility. And this, right here, is the threshold of transformation, the quiet, profound, and deeply personal awakening that marks the start of something extraordinary. Have you ever stopped to question who you really are, beneath all the roles, habits, and stories that you've carried for years? The truth is, much of what you call you is actually a carefully constructed identity, built over time to navigate the world, to survive, to be accepted, and to feel safe. From childhood, we are conditioned to adopt certain patterns, to fit into certain molds, to behave in ways that meet the expectations of family, society, and culture. These patterns form a structure, a framework that allows us to function, but rarely do they reflect the full, unfiltered essence of our being. Over time, this framework becomes rigid, and it begins to limit us, even as it once protected us. Identity is like a costume we wear. It gives us form, shape, and recognition, but it is never the same as the person inside the costume. We learn to identify with our achievements, our failures, our fears, and our narratives, believing that they define us. I am the responsible one, I am the shy one, I am the hard worker, I am not good enough. These declarations of self, repeated over years, solidify into a concrete sense of identity. And while they may have once served a purpose, they can become chains that bind us to a version of reality that no longer matches who we are becoming. When we cling to these old identities, we often confuse stability with stagnation. We think if we can just hold on to this version of ourselves, everything will remain predictable and safe. But identity, like everything else in the universe, is dynamic. It is designed to evolve. Our inner frequency, the subtle vibrations of our consciousness, shifts constantly. When our frequency begins to rise, to expand, to seek new experiences and deeper alignment, the old self can no longer contain it. And this is when the tension begins, the inner feeling that something is off, that the life we are living no longer fits the person we are becoming. Consider this. If your identity is formed largely from external conditioning, then every time you try to manifest, grow, or step into a higher reality, a conflict arises. The old self, the one shaped by past fears, limitations, and expectations, resists the expansion. It fears change because change threatens the security it has built. It fears letting go because letting go feels like death. And yet, this resistance is precisely what signals that you are ready to move into a higher expression of self. The discomfort, the restlessness, the unease, all of it is a mirror reflecting the tension between the old and the emerging self. Identity is not inherently bad, nor is it meant to be discarded lightly. It served you, kept you safe. But now, it is outdated, and the universe will not allow you to carry forward a self-concept that no longer aligns with your evolving frequency. This is why so many spiritual seekers feel stuck even when they are trying so hard. They meditate, they manifest, they seek guidance, but they feel blocked because the identity they are operating from is misaligned with the energy they are trying to embody. The body, mind, and soul cannot fully vibrate at a higher level if they are still tethered to the old self. This is where the concept of contrast becomes vital. To recognize the limitations of your current self, you must observe the difference between the life you are living and the life you are being called to live. It is not about judgment, shame, or self-criticism. It is about honest observation. Notice the moments when you feel constrained, when your reactions feel automatic, when fear overrides curiosity. These are the footprints of an identity that has served its purpose but can no longer carry you forward. The old self is not evil. It is merely incapable of holding the new frequency that is emerging within you. From a quantum perspective, your consciousness interacts with reality in ways you may not fully realize. The identity you cling to sets the parameters of your perception, the lens through which you interpret experiences. When the lens is outdated, the universe begins to show you experiences that feel uncomfortable, misaligned, or even contradictory. These experiences are not punishments, they are signals. They are gentle nudges, or sometimes forceful ones, telling you that the self you are holding on to cannot fully navigate the reality you are moving toward. Every challenge, every moment of inner conflict, is the universe inviting you to shed what no longer serves and step into who you are truly capable of being. It is important to remember that the dissolution of old identity is not instantaneous. It is a process, a gentle yet insistent unraveling. You may notice recurring patterns, old fears resurfacing, or moments of doubt that feel almost unbearable. These are the natural symptoms of identity realignment. The key is to observe them without fear, without judgment, and without the need to immediately resolve them. When you witness the old self with compassion and awareness, it loses its grip. You begin to understand that it is not disappearing because it was wrong, it is making space for something far greater. Ultimately, the question is not, who am I, in the way you have been taught to ask it. The question is, who am I becoming? Who is emerging beneath the roles, labels, and narratives you have carried all your life? Who is waiting quietly in the shadows of your old self, ready to step forward when you give permission? By exploring this question, you are not abandoning yourself. You are evolving. You are recognizing that identity is a tool, not a prison, and that the self you are becoming is far more expansive, creative, and aligned than the self you thought defined you. So, as you listen to these words, take a moment to sense the parts of your identity that feel heavy, rigid, or outdated. Notice the subtle ways they resist the truth of your emerging self. And then breathe. Allow the understanding to settle that this expiration is not failure. It is evolution. It is the gentle whisper of consciousness inviting you to step into a new expression of self, one that is capable of carrying the frequency, the clarity, and the alignment you have been seeking all along. The old self cannot carry you forward, but the new self, waiting patiently beneath it, is ready to rise. There comes a point in life when the subtle signals of transformation can no longer be ignored. You may have noticed it already, a quiet unrest beneath the surface, an emptiness that nothing seems to fill, or a sense of being out of rhythm with the world around you. These are not coincidences. They are the unmistakable signs that the identity you have relied on is reaching its expiration. When an old self is no longer aligned with your evolving frequency, the body, mind, and soul begin to react. These reactions are the symptoms of a deeper shift, a shift that is necessary, inevitable, and ultimately liberating. The first symptom is often restlessness. It begins subtly, almost like a background vibration that you cannot quite name. You may find yourself questioning familiar routines, feeling unsatisfied with achievements that once brought pride, or sensing that your relationships, even if comfortable, no longer resonate at a deeper level. There is a constant whisper inside you, "This is not enough. Something more is calling." It can be disorienting, especially if you have spent years defining yourself by stability, routine, or external validation. Yet, restlessness is not a curse. It is the inner self signaling that the current identity can no longer support the version of reality you are beginning to access. Next comes confusion. You may feel like you are standing at a crossroads with no clear direction. Decisions that once seemed straightforward now feel heavy and complex. The familiar frameworks of thought, the habitual mental patterns that used to guide you, suddenly appear inadequate. You may even catch yourself asking, "Who am I if I am not this?" This confusion is deeply uncomfortable and it can provoke fear. But fear is a natural companion of transformation. It is the echo of the old self resisting the new. The more you attempt to cling to outdated identities, the more pronounced this confusion becomes. And yet, within this discomfort lies clarity waiting to emerge, the clarity of a self unbound by old limitations. Emotional turbulence often follows. When an identity expires, emotions that were once predictable become unpredictable. You may experience sudden sadness, inexplicable anger, or waves of anxiety that seem to have no clear source. These emotions are not signs of weakness. They are signals of release. They indicate that the layers of self-protection and conditioning built over years or even decades are beginning to dissolve. Just as a river may feel turbulent when rocks shift beneath it, your emotional landscape can feel chaotic as the structure of identity reorganizes itself. These waves are meant to be felt, not suppressed. Resistance only prolongs the process. Acceptance and observation, on the other hand, allow the emotional energy to flow and create space for transformation. Another common symptom is a sense of disconnection. You may feel detached from your surroundings, relationships, or even from yourself. Activities that once brought joy may feel hollow, and familiar spaces may feel strangely foreign. This detachment is a protective mechanism, a way for your consciousness to signal that the old self is no longer sufficient. It is as if the soul is quietly clearing space, removing the attachments and patterns that no longer align with the higher self you are becoming. While this can feel lonely or isolating, it is also a profound invitation to reconnect, not with the old but with the emerging essence of your true self. Physical sensations can also manifest during this phase. Some people report unexplained fatigue, tension in the body, or subtle shifts in energy. These physical cues are intimately tied to identity because the body stores the patterns and beliefs of the old self. As those patterns begin to release, the body may protest or feel out of balance. This is why it is crucial to honor these sensations, to treat them as messages rather than obstacles. Breath work, gentle movement, meditation, or mindful awareness can help the nervous system adjust to the subtle yet profound changes taking place. Many people also experience a sense of temporal disorientation, a feeling that time is either stretching or contracting. Days may feel longer, weeks may seem shorter, and life itself can feel surreal. This distortion occurs because the mind is attempting to integrate the old framework of identity with the emerging self that is seeking to step forward. Time, in this phase, is less about chronological measurement and more about the rhythm of transformation. Being present in each moment, rather than clinging to past definitions or future expectations, becomes essential for navigating this liminal space. Perhaps the most challenging symptom is the fear of the unknown. Letting go of an old identity can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff without knowing if there is solid ground below. This fear is natural, but it is also an indicator that transformation is underway. The old self fears dissolution because it equates change with loss. But from a higher perspective, this fear is a threshold, a necessary passage through which you must move to access the life that truly resonates with your soul. The key is to step into fear with awareness rather than avoidance, to allow it to coexist with curiosity, and to trust that the unknown holds far more possibility than limitation. It is important to recognize that these symptoms do not occur in isolation. They often overlap, creating a complex and sometimes overwhelming inner landscape. Yet, within this complexity lies the essence of transformation. Each restless thought, each wave of emotion, each moment of confusion or disconnection is a signal from your higher self, guiding you toward alignment. The symptoms are not obstacles, they are doorways. They are the language through which your consciousness communicates, urging you to release the old self and step into the emerging reality waiting for you. During this expiration phase, it can be helpful to reframe your perspective. Instead of seeing these experiences as signs of failure or inadequacy, view them as natural milestones of evolution. Just as the caterpillar must undergo the unsettling process of metamorphosis before it can emerge as a butterfly, the self must pass through these symptoms of identity expiration before it can fully embody the higher frequency it is moving toward. Resistance will only prolong the discomfort. Surrender, however, allows the process to unfold naturally and gracefully. Finally, this phase is an invitation to cultivate presence. Observe without judgment, feel without suppression, and allow the unfolding to continue without forcing conclusions. Each symptom, each wave of discomfort, is a message that the old self is making space for the new. By leaning into this moment with awareness and compassion, you begin to align with the emerging self before it fully manifests in external reality. You are learning to navigate the tension between who you were and who you are becoming, a tension that is not to be feared but embraced. In this way, the expiration phase is not a period of loss. It is a period of preparation, a time when the old self dissolves just enough to make room for the new self to step forward. The symptoms are your markers, guiding you toward alignment, clarity, and authenticity. The restlessness, confusion, emotional turbulence, detachment, physical sensations, temporal distortion, and fear, they are all part of a sacred process. And as you move through them, you begin to sense, even if faintly, the contours of a self that is more aligned, more expansive, and more capable than you have ever known. The old self is fading, not as a punishment but as a necessary passage. And on the other side of this phase, waiting quietly, is the new self, ready to rise, ready to embody, and ready to navigate a reality that aligns with the frequency you have been cultivating all along. Releasing an old identity can feel like standing at the edge of a vast unknown, knowing that the life you have known is shifting, and yet not fully seeing the life that awaits. It is both exhilarating and frightening, a delicate balance between surrender and awareness. Many of us make the mistake of believing that transformation requires force, that we must push, resist, or dismantle our old selves aggressively in order to grow. But true evolution is far subtler, far gentler. It is the art of allowing the old self to fade naturally while consciously creating space for the emerging self to rise. The first step in this process is awareness. You must begin by noticing the parts of your identity that no longer serve you, the beliefs, habits, and narratives that have kept you safe but now feel limiting. Perhaps it is the identity of being the responsible one, the perfectionist, or the one who always sacrifices for others. These roles may have provided structure, meaning, or validation, but they are no longer aligned with the life you are being called to live. Awareness is not about blame or judgment. It is about seeing clearly what is no longer aligned and acknowledging it with compassion. Once you are aware, the next step is acceptance. This is a gentle but powerful practice, accepting that the old identity has served its purpose and that its expiration is natural, inevitable, and necessary. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It does not mean that you give up on growth or responsibility. Instead, it is the conscious recognition that clinging to the old self only creates resistance and suffering. When you accept the natural expiration of identity, you allow the inner energy that was trapped in outdated patterns to be released, creating room for alignment, creativity, and expansion. Letting go also requires a shift in perspective. Many people believe that releasing an identity is the same as rejecting themselves. They fear that letting go means losing the essence of who they are. This is a misunderstanding. You are not abandoning yourself. You are releasing a framework that has become restrictive. Think of it as shedding a coat that has grown too tight. Underneath is the body, agile and ready to move freely. The essence of who you are does not disappear. It expands. The core consciousness, the true self that is beyond labels and roles, remains intact and becomes increasingly accessible as the old identity fades. Practical methods can support this gentle release. Mindfulness and meditation are among the most effective tools, helping you observe the old self without attachment or judgment. Journaling can also be transformative. Write down the beliefs, habits, or roles that feel outdated, and then allow yourself to reflect on how they once served you. Breathwork, yoga, or movement practices help release energetic tension held in the body from clinging to old patterns. Rituals, small, symbolic acts of letting go, can also help your subconscious mind recognize that a shift is occurring. Even a simple act, like burning a piece of paper with limiting beliefs written on it, can create a profound internal signal that the old self is ready to step aside. Equally important is cultivating trust. Transformation requires surrender, and surrender requires trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the universe, and trust in the natural timing of change. You do not need to force the emerging self to appear instantly. It will unfold naturally at the pace that aligns with your inner frequency. By trusting the process, you reduce the inner struggle and open a space for effortless alignment. The old self dissolves more gracefully when it is not being attacked, forced, or resisted. Another essential aspect of releasing without destroying is self-compassion. The old self may have carried fear, guilt, or patterns of self-judgment. As these aspects arise, respond with gentleness. Speak to yourself as you would to a child or a dear friend. Acknowledge that the old identity was doing its best with the resources available at the time. By embracing compassion, you prevent the collapse of the old self from becoming traumatic or destabilizing. Instead, it becomes a conscious, tender evolution, a passage rather than a rupture. This process also invites reflection on the contrast between the old self and the new self. Begin to imagine the version of yourself that is emerging. What qualities does this self embody? What habits, thoughts, and emotions align with this higher frequency? Visualization and contemplation are powerful tools here. By clearly sensing the contours of the new self, you provide direction for your consciousness to follow. The old identity naturally loosens its grip when the mind and heart are aligned with the potential of what is coming next. Finally, remember that releasing without destroying is a practice, not a single act. Some days you may feel fully aligned and spacious, while other days the old self may resurface with intensity. This is normal. Evolution is not linear. It is a spiral, moving through cycles of awareness, release, and integration. Patience, persistence, and presence are key. By consistently observing, accepting, and gently letting go, you create a rhythm in which the old self fades gracefully, leaving the emerging self ready to step fully into the reality you are becoming. In this way, releasing without destroying transforms what could be painful into something sacred. It becomes a conscious dance with your own evolution, a dance in which you honor the past, embrace the present, and welcome the future. The old identity, once clung to with fear and resistance, now dissolves as an ally, guiding you toward a version of self that is freer, more expansive, and more in resonance with the life you are meant to live. Transformation, at its deepest level, is not about fighting what no longer serves you. It is about allowing the natural unfolding of your consciousness. The old identity does not need to be destroyed. It needs only to be seen, honored, and released. When done in this way, you are no longer running from the past, nor are you grasping at the future. You are standing in the present, fully aligned, fully conscious, and fully ready to step into a self that is beyond limitation, beyond fear, and beyond the old boundaries that once defined you. The old self gently fades, making space for the emerging self to rise, not forced, not rushed, but naturally, beautifully, inevitably. As we come to the close of this journey, it is important to pause and reflect on what has been unfolding within you. The identity you once clung to, the version of yourself that carried you through survival, conditioning, and the familiar patterns of life, is naturally reaching its expiration. This is not a moment of loss, but a moment of profound opportunity. In its fading, the old self creates a sacred space for the self you were always meant to become, the self that has been quietly waiting beneath the surface, patiently aligning with the higher frequency of your consciousness. Becoming this new self is not about rushing, forcing, or reshaping yourself according to someone else's vision. It is about gentle unfolding. It is about noticing the subtle shifts within your thoughts, your emotions, and your body, and responding with awareness and compassion. The process requires trust. Trust in your own inner guidance, trust in the natural rhythm of transformation, and trust in the universe that is supporting your evolution. When you step into this trust, the emerging self does not feel foreign or overwhelming. Instead, it feels like a homecoming, a quiet recognition of who you truly are beneath all the layers of conditioning and identity. This new self is capable of experiencing life with a clarity, freedom, and alignment that the old self could not hold. You begin to make choices not from fear or obligation, but from resonance and alignment. Relationships, work, and creative expression start to reflect a deeper truth. Even challenges feel different because you are no longer reacting from a constrained identity, you are responding from a place of expanded consciousness. Life begins to unfold not as a series of struggles to survive, but as an elegant, unfolding dance of possibilities, where you are both participant and observer, both creator and witness. It is essential to remember that this is not an endpoint, but a continuation. The expiration of one identity is part of an ongoing rhythm, a constant, beautiful evolution of consciousness. Each old self that fades makes space for the next. Each phase of letting go prepares you for deeper alignment, and each moment of awareness brings you closer to the version of yourself that is most authentic. The journey is cyclical, expansive, and endlessly renewing. As you move forward, carry this understanding with you. The discomfort, the fear, the restlessness, they were never enemies. They were signals, guides, and invitations. They were the necessary echoes of a self making way for something greater. By observing without resistance, by releasing without destruction, and by trusting the unfolding process, you align with a self that is not defined by limitation, but by potential. Step gently into this truth. Breathe into the space that has been created by the expiration of your old identity. Allow yourself to feel the emergence of a self that is freer, more expansive, and fully aligned with the reality you are ready to inhabit. This is the quiet awakening, the subtle yet profound transformation, the moment when you become someone you have never been but always were.